This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm really excited to be with you today. We've got a really cool episode in store for you. We're going to be talking about something that is, has become increasingly important over the years that more and more people are struggling with in today's world that we live in. And so today we're going to be talking about something called imposter syndrome. Some people have it, know they have it. Some people, have these kind of symptoms and do the kinds of things that people with imposter syndrome do that don't know they have it and are dealing with those kind of things. It's just kind of a daily way of doing things for themselves, but in reality, they may be suffering from some of the symptoms of imposter syndrome. And so there's a lot going on in this space. There's a lot of stuff being put out there, talking about it, and some of it is good, some of it is maybe not so good. You kind of have to take things with a grain of salt, like anything else in the world. But today I'm going to be kind of breaking this down and helping you understand this in what this is, why this is an issue, how this is impacting people and causing people negative things and having a negative impact on them, and then what to do about it. If you are kind of going down this path of maybe developing some of these symptoms and some of these ways that imposters are behaving and thinking, then how to course correct. If you maybe are involved in things in life where you may be considered an imposter or having imposter syndromes, how to change that, how to get out of that mode. And so this is a really important thing. I've written some things and contributed to Forbes recently on this, but also just wanted to kind of break it down on the podcast because a lot of people I talk to are dealing with this in some form or fashion. And I thought it was just important to talk about it as we talk about so many other important things on this podcast. So let's kind of start breaking this down. Studies that I have been reading here recently on this topic show that about 70% of people in our world today, certainly here in the United States, are dealing with some form of imposter syndrome. That could be, kind of on the far end of the spectrum of having a lot of issues and a lot of symptoms with this, or it could be, they're just experiencing some of these things. But more and more people are experiencing imposter syndrome. This is becoming more and more prevalent, which is not a good thing. As we're going to find out here and learn more about imposter syndrome, this is not a good problem to have. This is the kind of problem you need to recognize and deal with it, just like you do with any other mental challenges you may have or any other physical challenges you have. Imposter syndrome is more mental, but it certainly does create some issues for you physically. So 70%, 7 out of 10 people that are walking around on the streets and the malls and the restaurants and, around you in life are experiencing imposter syndrome. Interesting enough, 84% of leaders, executives, are facing this. So this is becoming more prevalent in people that are in positions of leadership, people in positions of power and authority, people in positions where they're more visible to other people than other folks may be. And so let's kind of talk about what is this thing called imposter syndrome. So let me ask you a few questions. Have you ever felt less than? Have you ever felt like you could be a fraud or could be exaggerating things to certain people at certain times in ways that may make you look bigger or better than what you feel you may be? So I'll let that kind of soak in for a minute. Is there a time you may have felt that? Is there a time where you feel like sometimes you may be a facade? Maybe on social media, you're making things sound better or making things look different or better about your personal life or your family life or something going on in your business, putting things out there that maybe could be perceived as, not as true as you may think it needs to be. If so, you could be experiencing imposter syndrome, right? It's about the perception of you or the things you're doing or involved in as it relates to the reality of that in your mind. Okay, I'm going to say that again. This is about perceptions other people outside of your world see and think about you and what you're doing and what you're involved in, whether it's professionally or personally, as it compares to the reality of that in your mind. That creates a gap. There's this kind of external version of you and what you're doing, and then there's this kind of internal version of you. You ever found yourself in a conversation, somebody comes up to you, hey, congratulations on the promotion. Hey, congratulations on your company's achievement as a best place to work or something like that. And they're singing praises and giving you a lot of attaboys and, just are very happy for you, excited for you. And you try to be humble and but in the back of your mind, you think and you eventually say, it's not that big of a deal. They're giving away these awards to a lot of people. We were just one, and you'll kind of downplay it, certainly in your mind. If you're downplaying things on a regular basis, then there could be a disconnect. There could be this imposter syndrome thing going on where you aren't feeling as worthy as what other people are seeing you as. You're putting yourself out there in bigger and better ways than what you feel you may be doing, right? And there's this fear of somebody finding out and calling you out on that, and you're being perceived as a fraud or perceived as, over exaggerating, being perceived as not being truthful. And that fear of being found out or being called an imposter or making things sound better, look better, feel better than what they really are, that fear of being exploited as something different than what it may be is imposter syndrome. All right. When you second guess yourself and question what you're doing, how you're doing it, and it slows you down, it keeps you from being your best. And it's almost like you're playing tennis in your mind on who's showing up today and how do I need to present myself today. And I can't remember what I said to this person 3 days ago. So I get lost in the conversation about what I should say or what I did say and how to follow up with that. And it's this battle in your mind on really who you are, what your company is, or what you're representing versus perceived reality. Does any of that sound familiar? Does any of that cross your mind? Have you had those kinds of thoughts passing through that brain of yours at some point in the past year, the past month, the past week? If you can relate to this, if you feel like I am talking to you directly, if any of this sounds familiar, then you could be in the deep end of the imposter syndrome pool. You could be on the steps getting into the pool, not quite fully into imposter syndrome. You could be on some part of the spectrum here. And so I just want to, highlight this happens to a lot of people. The challenge is, do you recognize it when you're in it? Do you know what's happening? Do you know how to navigate out of it? We all go through things in life. We all have setbacks. We all have, things that go well, some things that don't go so well, some things we wish we can take back, things that get put out there that may or may not be true about us that upsets us. We all experience these different kinds of things. But if you're relating to it as I'm describing it, you could have imposter syndrome, or you could be on the brink of imposter syndrome. And so the point of today in this very important episode is that you recognize that, so you know what to do and how to deal with that. And there's some different strategies for that we are going to get into today. Okay. But this is really, really powerful because these things have a major effect. This isn't just like stubbing your toe and you'll feel better tomorrow kind of stuff. The effects of imposter syndrome in your mind going to these places and kind of battling around in your brain has catastrophic, dramatic effects on you in a lot of different ways. And so some of the folks, may see these things or feel these things more than others. There's different kind of levels or extremes of these things, but I want to just talk to you a little bit about the effects. And I want you to stop and think, do I relate to these effects? Am I feeling these effects? Are these things affecting me in the way that Coach Jason here on this podcast is defining them? So here are the effects of imposter syndrome. It creates self-doubt in your mind about who you are and what you're doing, and whether it's the right thing, the wrong thing, and how people are perceiving you, right? The effects are that you overthink about things. You get in your own head and you think about, well, should I look this way or should I look that way? Do I need to present myself this way or that way? What did that person say? Why did they say it that way? Are they on to me? Are they seeing things that I'm not seeing? Are they telling all their friends and neighbors that, we're not as credible as a company, or we're not doing things the right way, and we're misrepresenting things or falsely advertising things? Like, you just get in your head and you overthink it. And 9 times out of 10, the things we think people are thinking and saying, and all the things we're overthinking about, usually aren't true or existent, right? The effects of imposter syndrome is it causes stress, unnecessary stress and anxiety, always kind of looking over your shoulder, wondering what people are thinking and saying. And it puts you in this mode of playing defense. You're looking online and talking to people, and, well, what did he say? And what did she say? Well, why did they say that? And you go down this rat hole, right? It distracts you from the important things you need to be focused on. Let me say that again. A major impact from imposter syndrome, especially in folks that are in leadership roles or roles that, where they need to be an example, there's a lot of visibility on them. It distracts you from the most important things you need to be focused on. You need to be focused on the future and where the organization's going and accomplishing your goals and staying on track with the things that are most important for you and your family. Imposter syndrome takes you down different paths that distract you from that. And you can be really busy. You can do a lot of things and be involved in a lot of different efforts and go home every single night just dog tired and exhausted and have completed nothing. Imposter syndrome takes you away from your ability to achieve big, bold things because you're focused on the small fry things. People with imposter syndrome don't get a lot of sleep at night. They're just constantly thinking about things and they can't turn their brain off. They can't just decompress because they just feel like unsettled because of the differences between perceptions and reality and who they are, what they are, and how they show up and need to show up, and worrying about what people think and say that may or may not even be true because they probably don't even know you on that level anyway, right? A lot of people with imposter syndrome lose sleep. Okay. They play these scenarios of what if. Well, what if they find out I'm not as good of a consultant as I am portraying myself to be? What if they find out that my service is not a 10, it's really a 7, and they're going to fire me? Is my reputation going to go down the hill? They just constantly feed on the what ifs and worry about the what ifs, right? And it takes you down these negative rabbit holes, doesn't allow you to really tap into who you are as the best person you are, your God given skills and talents, right? It detracts from those. It prevents you from maximizing your true potential, causes you to withdraw and overthink and spend time in places with people and in areas that aren't really in your best interest. Okay. It plays mind games with you. Imposter syndrome is a mindset mind game. The question is, are you prepared to win that game? Are you prepared to defeat that game? Or are you going to let it defeat you? All right. So I'm going to give you a second to think about that. Are you letting this defeat you and affect you in all the ways I've just described? Or can you defeat it? Can you win? Today, we're going to help you win. As I work with people as a coach and I talk to people in businesses all across, the United States and even outside the United States, this is something I see a lot, especially as the original statistic I talked to you, 84% of executives deal with imposter syndrome at some point in time. But I really, really see this more often, more frequently in high achieving types of people, people that are in leadership roles, executives, high performing athletes. We've recently just into the Paris Olympics. And so you saw a lot of Olympians on TV competing for the gold and the medals. And there are Olympians and athletes that have imposter syndrome. A lot of celebrities have imposter syndrome. We're going to talk a little bit about that here in a minute, right? Movie stars, singers, people that are in very highly visible roles in the public eye a lot, right? Are very critical and they think about their image and everything they do and when they do it and how they do it. And the high achieving people tend to struggle with this more often. Not that imposter syndrome isn't in other areas of life, other different types of people, but it certainly is in the high achievers. So if you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm an aspiring person, I'm a motivated person, I'm a go-getter, I'm a person that wants to be my best and be challenged and pushed to my limits, then you could be susceptible to imposter syndrome. You could be more vulnerable to that. You need to know that. That's important. That will help you in the prevention part of this and how to deal with it if you find yourself in this situation where you're experiencing imposter syndrome. So, why do these types of people experience these things more often than others? I'm going to break that down for you here, real quick. They just think and operate differently. They march to a different drum. They're always striving for excellence. Like nothing is ever good enough to a high achiever. There's a little bit of perfectionism there in that mindset where they're always kind of critical and always kind of judgmental about themselves and what they're doing and how they're showing up and et cetera. It was interesting. My oldest daughter is a high achieving, very self-conscious, go-getter, independent young lady, which is great. She was interviewing, she's graduating here soon with her undergrad, and she's going into a doctorate program for physical therapy. And so she had to apply to these physical therapy schools and get in these accelerated programs to graduate with her doctorate in 2 years. In one of those universities, she had to interview. She had to do an on-camera interview and really walk her through this process to really vet her out and make sure she was a good fit, make sure she was ready for all of this. And she told me and my spouse at the end of all that, when it was done, she's like, I just don't feel like good about this. I just feel like I messed up. I feel like I didn't answer some questions as good as I could have. And there was this second guessing piece. There was this negativity in there. And come to find, she did some interviews with some other groups as well in the school where she felt like she messed up the most, where she just wasn't her best self on the interview, which is the school she wanted to get into. It was her number one choice. called this past Friday and said, "Congratulations, you just got accepted," right? We can be very critical of ourselves in who we are and what we do and how we do it. And you see that a lot with the high achievers. These people are willing to do things that others may not be. They're willing to make tremendous sacrifices. They just have a kind of an edge to them that some people may not be capable of doing or willing to do or put in the effort that some of these really high achievers are willing to do. Not everybody's going to be an Olympic athlete. Not everybody's going to be in the NFL as a football player. Not everybody's going to be a millionaire. In fact, the statistics say that, right? Only 2% of high school football players will ever get accepted and play at the collegiate level. And less than that make it into the NFL. You take a look at the military. I've got a military background. Only 2% of officers that serve in the military will make it to the rank of colonel or general, the top of the ranks. Less than 2%. It's very competitive. And these high achieving types of people are very competitive, which means their brains are going, very fast and thinking about a lot of different things in the competitiveness, right? And so sometimes they see themselves as kind of venturing away, kind of like eagles soar by themselves. Sometimes really high achievers find themselves kind of soaring like an eagle and migrating away from the flock, where geese fly in a flock, other types of birds fly in a flock. High achievers tend to be independent. And so when they look around, they can go so far, so fast, and get in their heads so much that they become kind of isolated. They second guess themselves. Well, everybody else is over here. Is this really the right place? Is this really the best place for me? And they get nervous because they're not part of the pack. And sometimes, you have to get comfortable being in that place. And sometimes people aren't. And when they see the pack of people doing stuff on social media or a pack of people doing things over here, some of these high achievers feel isolated. And sometimes that gets in their heads and causes them to start developing different aspects of imposter syndrome. People start thinking with imposter syndrome that, that's too good to be true. Maybe we're, not going to make it this year. Maybe I'm not good enough to take the company to the next level. Maybe I need to do things differently. Maybe I don't deserve this promotion. Maybe I'm not ready for this next opportunity. And maybe feel like they don't deserve it. Maybe Sally, who was talking about me in the break room, maybe she's right. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I am a brown noser. Maybe the only reason I got this job in this position and got promoted over other people was because I, went to lunch with the boss one time and then they just like me better, right? You start feeding into some of these things and takes you down this path. Not a good place to be. But you'd be surprised at how many people think this way. You'd be surprised at the kinds of people and the levels of people that deal with this. And so I'm going to run down a list of some folks that have admitted they've dealt with imposter syndrome. I'm going to read you some things and maybe it'll resonate with you too. First person I want to talk about real quick is Michelle Obama, the wife of former President Barack Obama. Man, bubbly lady, good energy, positive. She's very well accomplished and educated. She was the first lady for 8 years while her husband and her, led the country. Very well liked and respected lady. Has imposter syndrome. And I quote, "I still feel I have a little imposter syndrome. It doesn't go away. It's that feeling that I shouldn't take me seriously. What do I know? I share this with you because we all have doubts in our abilities about our power and what our power really is. And if you are suffering from imposter syndrome, then you've given up some power. You need to reclaim that power." All right. Another person you probably have heard of, Tom Hanks, the famous actor in movies like Castaway, Saving Private Ryan, Forrest Gump. He says, no matter what we've done, there comes a point where you think, how did we get here? When are they going to discover that I am, in fact, a fraud and take everything away from me? Boy, that is really, really powerful. A lot of people with imposter syndrome, there's this fear of something being found out about and something gets taken away and you're left with nothing. That is a really big deal, big concern with people with imposter syndrome. Okay, you'll probably know this one too. Sonia Sotomayor, the first Hispanic Supreme Court justice. Okay. It's a feeling like a fraud and not fitting in throughout her life. I spent my years at Princeton and while at law school and my various professional jobs, not feeling completely part of the worlds I inhabit. I'm always looking over my shoulder and wondering if I measure up. Here is a Supreme Court justice wondering if she measures up, and she's at the highest court in the greatest nation on earth. That's how people think. Next person, Barbara Corcoran, right? You probably know her from Shark Tank and, being a real estate mogul in the state of New York. Who doesn't suffer from imposter syndrome, she says. Even when I sold my business for 66 million, I felt like an absolute fraud. Like it just wasn't good enough. It wasn't real. Like I've been on the treadmill running so hard and so fast, and then I sell my business, and most people think, oh, I'd be wildly successful. I just made $66 million off of my business, and she felt like it wasn't real, like it was a fraud. All right, famous singer Lady Gaga. I still sometimes feel like a loser kid in high school and just have to pick myself up and tell myself that I'm a superstar every morning so that I can get through the day and be there for my fans because they need me to be that for them. Wow, that is really, really powerful. A loser kid in school that needs to pick herself up every day and be the rock star that people need her or look up to her in that fashion to be. Well, that's a lot of pressure. Imposter syndrome, folks, they feel a lot of pressure on themselves to do things. It's bigger than life kinds of things. And that creates a lot of stress. All right, the last one I'm going to share with you, another person you probably know, Howard Schultz. He's the famous CEO of Starbucks. Okay. Very few people, whether you've been in the job before or not, get into the seat and believe today that I am now qualified to be the CEO. They're not going to tell you that, but it's true. Basically, a lot of leaders in a lot of important positions, whether it's government or private sector or wherever in the world, people get in these leadership positions, these very powerful CEO, executive level roles, and they're happy about it. They make good money. They have the title. They're ready to go, but they still feel like, oh man, I need to pinch myself. Is this really happening to me? I'm in the seat. Am I really ready to go? Have I thought about these things? And I will tell you from my own personal experience, I'll use my military background as example. There are many, many times where we practice in military exercises and war games and things to prepare ourselves mentally, physically, in every way to go somewhere in the world and deal with an issue, deal with an adversary or a potential adversary. And you train and you train, and then you're on the airplane. And then you land in this foreign country and you get off the plane and you're carrying weapons and it's real. You're in the real world situation. I experienced that, many, many times in my career. But, first time I went to Iraq and we kicked off the war in 2003 against Saddam Hussein in the country of Iraq, like we were ready, we were confident. But then when we got there and we were in the environment and it was go time, There were times I thought to myself, man, are we really ready? Did we cover every scenario? Did we make sure we got this packed? Do we have enough bullets for the guns? Do we have enough protection for our people? And what happened? And you're just nervous about whether you've missed something. And I was nervous that I might have missed something and it might cause a problem, or we're not prepared, or we don't have enough resources. And like, I want to win. I want people to be successful. Lives were on the line. And I was scared that something might not go well and somebody gets hurt or killed. And I've got to go back and look that spouse and those kids in the eyes of the person injured or killed that was under my watch and face those people that will never see their loved one again. And that was a scary thought for me. That was a very scary thought for me. And so there were times that I experienced some of these symptoms myself. That's just one example. And it's hard to get out of that mode. And so as we go forward on this podcast, I want to talk about some ways you can deal with this, no matter what stage or what level of imposter syndrome you may have, an extreme level or a minimal level. Here are some tried and true ways that you can tackle it and defeat it. Number one, recognize where your thinking may come from. Okay, you want to break the cycle of imposter syndrome. It is a cycle. It is a rhythm of your mind gets in, and you need to break it, chop it right off, and disrupt it. Okay, recognize where these thoughts may come from, right? Some of these thoughts about you not being good enough or not being prepared or, not as big as, people are presenting you, or you can't walk the talk that's being put out there, whether you're doing the talking or somebody else is, right? Recognize where that comes from. And usually, if you really track this down, those types of thoughts kind of go back to childhood, things that your parents may have said or done, things that a teacher may have said. I had a teacher one time says, you're not going to amount to much. You're going to be, over here doing this, that, and the other. You're not going to make good grades. You're not going to get into college. I've had people because of my personality. I was kind of hyper as a kid, and I was a little rebellious as a kid, right? And so people didn't see the potential. They only saw what they saw on the surface and then judged me for that. And then I felt less than. And when people tell you things or look at you a certain way or put doubt in your mind to second guess yourself, to reduce your confidence, that stays with you. That is not easy to just walk away and never think about that again. Sometimes we go through things, experiences that cause us to second guess things. Sometimes we may get in a car accident and we're not as confident to drive for a while. We may get, laid off from work or fired from a job. And whether it was your fault or not, whether it was the company doing poorly or if the company was being sold or merged and restructured, whatever the reasons may be, you going through that experience puts things in your mind where you kind of second guess, well, maybe I could have done something different. Maybe I could have added more value. Maybe I could have gotten along with the boss different. Maybe I could have put my pride aside. And you go down that path, right? But know where these thoughts could be coming from and how they could affect you. Acknowledge those things. So just because somebody says something or has an opinion or a feeling about you doesn't mean it's true. It just means they may not be capable of seeing the other things in you that exist. Just because you had a bad experience, just because you may have failed or stumbled or fallen on your face doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. It doesn't mean you can't do it again. You can't overcome it. It just means that's what happened at that point in time. Even though imposter syndrome is kind of a label and there's kind of like, people that are frauds, people that are this, there's this negative connotation around imposter syndrome. It doesn't mean you have a disease or there's something wrong with you or you're a problem or whatever. It is not that. The world has labeled it that way. But at the end of the day, this is about your mindset and your ability to recognize where you are in your thinking about yourself and the things that you're involved in in turning that narrative around. Okay. So you're not doomed with a disease for the rest of your life. This is just a period of your life where you just need to see things differently. You need to have a different perspective. Number two, know yourself better. There's this thing I do with my clients called the five swings, which is based off of a John Maxwell concept. At the end of the day, what are you really the best at? What are the five things that you are the absolute best at? God gave you talent and abilities he didn't give anybody else. Like you are blessed, whether you can run the fastest, whether you can throw the ball the farthest, whether you can give the best presentations, whether you're the best salesperson, whatever that is, you got people skills or athletic abilities or whatever that may be. What are the five things about you that you are truly, truly the best at? And we all have them. Being in touch with that, and I take people through an exercise of figuring that out if they haven't already, under the notion of, if you just spent your day doing those five things and nothing else, you'd still move the needle. Sometimes people with imposter syndrome, they get caught up in doing a lot of things at one time and doing too many things at one time. Where if they just really focus on the things they're really truly the blessed at, God-given talents and abilities, and just really be the best and get just better and better and better at that, that would solve a lot of things, right? This is about passion. This is about your highest level of confidence, because whatever you're the best at, whatever you know most about, whatever you've done the most, those are the things where you're the highest in confidence, right? Imposter syndrome dilutes that confidence. Doing things that you're the best at and staying in that space and delegating and assigning other people to do these other things allows you to stay confident and not allow imposter syndrome in the first place. Okay, number three, stop comparing yourself to everyone out there. Okay. That is a really big deal in this world. We have, information at our fingertip, breaking news, social media, stuff going on all around us all the time because everybody has smartphones. Everybody has access to information and through various channels at our disposal through technology. And we fall in this trap of looking at what everybody else is doing and what everybody else is saying and where they're going and comparing ourselves because most people, 70% of the world has imposter syndrome. And so they're making themselves maybe look better and sound better out there. And you see that and you compare yourself and you're like, well, I'm not doing that and I'm missing out and I'm not as good. I'm not as smart. And that plants negative seeds in your mind, right? You have nothing to prove to anybody. Stop comparing yourself to everybody else because they have a different fingerprint than you. They have a different eyeball signature than you. They have different God given skills and abilities than you, right? Stop comparing yourself to other people because you're not them. You're never going to be them. Just be the best at being you and know you have nothing to prove to anybody except yourself and your family and being with them and the God Almighty. Okay. Focus on improving yourself. Focus on being a better person, a more genuine person, a more connected person, person that is present when you're around people you care about and not trying to accomplish too many things at one time, reducing the number of your goals and going deeper into those things that contribute to you achieving some goals that are most important to you and not trying to do everything for everybody. Number four, celebrate success. People that have a high levels of imposter syndrome are people that struggle because they get in the mindset of nothing's ever good enough, always comparing, always thinking about things from a critical standpoint of the gaps, the flaws, the weaknesses, right? People that don't have imposter syndrome, people that are thriving without some of those things, are celebrating success. They're looking at where they've been and where they've come and how good they're doing, and that they're happy and they're healthy and they've got a lot of positive things going. They take for granted a lot of these things that are really positive and neglect to celebrate that success. Reflect more, be proud of the things you're doing more, and know that, this is a journey. This is not a race, it's not a competition. Celebrate that success and be more thankful, be more humble about that, and appreciate those things more. Number 5, surround yourself with positive people, strong people, people that aren't negative, people that aren't going to be critical and judgmental and always on social media saying stuff about people all the time. People that are at the water cooler, arguing and fighting and nitpicking and blaming and making excuses, right? Surround yourself with people that can encourage you, that can hold you accountable, people like mentors, coaches, friends that can be honest with you and give you good feedback and not allow you go down this process of creating imposter syndrome for you. Lastly, number 6, balance. The most successful people, the happiest people in life are the people that have the most balance in life, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, in every area of life. Be balanced, because a lot of people with imposter syndrome, I've noticed, are so focused on one or two things: their career, their titles, their career progression, not going fast enough, and what everybody thinks about them, and not being good enough, and all that. Like, they're focused on one or two areas of their life. And then if something happens, there's a bad day, or a bad experience happens, or they run into some trials and tribulations in their life, like it wrecks everything, like completely hit bottom of the barrel, because they don't have all these other things. They're too focused on one or two things, and they haven't surrounded themselves with a well-rounded, balanced life connected to these other areas where they can be, where they are healthy, they are exercising, they are maybe connected spiritually to something that's bigger than them, where they can pray or meditate and zoom out of their lives a little bit and look at the bigger picture. They can develop themselves and, get more education and learn and go through some trainings and read books. They're connected emotionally with their friends and, close loved ones. They are exercising, they are eating right, they are doing all of these things. And so the better you can balance that, the better you can be disciplined to setting up a routine and a cadence of putting time and effort and attention into these things as appropriate. Those things soften the blows of bad days and going down situations that lead to imposter syndromes, right? Minimizing risk, minimizing setbacks, and those types of things. And quite frankly, as I end the show, turn off social media from time to time. Like, you don't need to read it all day, all the time. Just disconnect and know that a lot of the stuff on social media, a lot of the stuff people are putting out there and presenting themselves to be, may not be fully genuine and realistic. Trust yourself, trust your loved ones, trust your God given abilities of how God made you, so that you can go out there and be happy with you, and you don't go down this path of imposter syndrome. And so today, I hope your eyes were open to what this is, some of the signs and the symptoms of this, and how it can affect you and really, really cause you some major, major issues mentally and physically in your life, kind of throw you off your game, make you unhappy, take you down a negative path. Hopefully today you've seen that this affects a lot of people. There's nobody that can't get in this realm of imposter syndrome. Even some of the most famous, well-known people that seem to be very successful in life have these issues. Okay. And take the 6 principles, the 6 action items of things you can do to prevent it or get out of it once you have maybe fallen into this trap of imposter syndrome, so that you can conquer it. And so I hope you got a lot of value from this today. This is a growing problem that leaders need to be aware of. They need to recognize it in themselves and prevent it. They need to recognize it in the people around them and help navigate people through these types of things. If you'd like to learn more, feel free to reach out at soarhighercoaching.com. You can reach out to me directly there. I can, talk with you more about it, answer questions, connect you to other people that you may need to talk to about these different types of things, depending on your situation. There's hope. There is a way to deal with this. There is a better way. Connect with me and others that can help you do that. And I think you're going to live a lot better life and be a lot more successful and content and fulfilled and gratified in life. And so look forward to talking with you on the next show. We've got another great show lined up for you next week. You definitely don't want to miss that. That's it for today. Have a great week, everybody.